Do you need to make your Canvas app bilingual? Or maybe you want to support more than 2 languages? In Canada, English and French are official languages, making a bilingual requirement very common. In the US, you might need to offer your app in Spanish language to reach out to more people. In this video, I will demonstrate you how you can implement this solution just in a few easy steps. Here is a screen from the Canvas app that supports 2 languages. And as you can see, the user can switch between the languages very easily. For this solution, I will use 2 SharePoint lists. One for storing supported languages, and the other for storing the actual text translations. Some people use Excel spreadsheets for storing translations, but using SharePoint lists has many advantages. First of all, the list can be secured with permissions. Secondly, translators can work on different languages simultaneously, while the reviewers can have read-only access to the translations. This is particularly important in organizations where bilingual support is regulated. Additionally, the SharePoint list is in the cloud, where it can be managed better than in some obscure location. The languages list has a language and the locale columns. Locale is the column we will be using in the Canvas app to determine which language the user chooses. The translations list has the following columns: screen, the Power App's screen name. Depending on the size of the app, screen differentiation can be helpful in some cases. Next column, control, the control that needs translation. For example, your buttons. Label, the actual translation. Language, the language such as EN for English or FR for French. Accessible label. If your Canvas app must comply with accessibility requirements, you need to ensure that the screen reader can read in either language to assist users with visual impairments. Now we need to add this SharePoint list as data sources to the Canvas app. Go to the Data section and select Add Data to open the Data Sources panel. Expand the Connectors section and scroll down to find the SharePoint connection. Click on the SharePoint connection to select it. The panel on the right side of the screen will open and you will be able to connect to the SharePoint site where you stored SharePoint lists for translations. Choose both SharePoint lists that you created. Each SharePoint list is now added as your data source. Additionally, we will use 2 collections. We will retrieve data from SharePoint lists data sources and store them in the respective collections. We will use these collections in our app to grab the translations for each control. We're going to use onStart event of the app to create these collections. The clear collect will load a content of your language's SharePoint list data source into the call languages collections. Next, we are setting the current language to English. Note that I hard-coded the language in this example. However, you can use the user's preferred language when the app starts. It gets a bit more complicated because there are operating system language settings, browser settings, and a preferred language in the M365 profile. You will have to figure out what will work the best for your users. The next Clear Connect will load values from the translation SharePoint list into the Call Translations collection. But it will load only the English translation here because we just set the current language to English. We are also going to give the user an ability to select a different language. We are going to use a combo box for that. Add the combo box control and assign the items property of the combo box to the called Languages collection. Add the following code to the controls on change event. We're going to set the language to the first 2 characters of the locale. Then we're going to use clear collect to reset the collection so it reflects the latest language selection. Next, we need to make sure that each control is aware of the text it needs to display. So for each control on your Canvas app screen, go to its text property and add the following code. Essentially, we are just going to grab from the collection translations the label for this control, and the label is a column in our data source that holds a translation for a given language. Change the control property for each control respectively. For instance, button browse, button exit, and so on and so forth. Additionally, if you have to meet accessibility requirements, for each accessible label of the control, add the following code. We're going to grab the accessible label value from the collection for the control button create new. And you will have to do this for each control that you need to assure accessibility for. Additionally, we can use translations in strings. And this is how you can change a title in your header. We are using a label for this value to show English or French greeting. And here is our solution in action. As you can see, we can switch between 2 languages very easily. And it took us maybe 10-15 minutes to create this solution, yeah? The clients that I work with use designated translators due to regulatory requirements. The translators will enter values themselves or will supply values for the manual entry. But if you don't have to go through the formal translation and approval process, you can use Microsoft Translation Services to automate your translations. You'll need to create a Power Automate flow, and you will manually trigger it only once for each language that you need translation for. You'll then configure your flow to walk through the SharePoint list that has controls and English labels. For each item it finds, it will create another list item for, let's say, a Spanish translation, and it will put that translation into the label column and into the accessible label. Note that you need to pay for translation services, but it will be much cheaper and faster than hiring a translator, particularly if you have a large app with a lot of text. And here is the diagram of this solution. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.